I'm Daniel Minty, a cognitive behavioral therapist, teacher, and writer. Sigmund Freud's signal theory of anxiety conceptualizes this emotion as a safeguard protecting us and others from threatening intrapsychic and interpersonal impulses and emotions. Freud saw anxiety signaling the press of this threatening psychic material, oftentimes aggressive or sexual impulses. Contemporary evolutionary psychology supports Freud's formulation. Biopsychosocial analysis considers anxiety a legacy emotion passed on to us from our early ancestors. As such, it serves the same purpose as other legacy emotions, like guilt and shame. Human beings are at once the most empathic and the most hostile species on Earth. For Homo sapiens to survive living with themselves, nature selected these emotions to inhibit acting on violent impulses that would damage individual human beings and the social fabric. Anxiety deters displays of aggression and anger in a number of ways. First, its very presence reminds us that anger is dangerous and to be avoided. Next, behavioral avoidance of conflict, say, is immediately positively reinforced by feelings of relief. The physiologic concomitants of anxiety, the freeze portion of the fight, flight, freeze response, immobilizes us, inhibiting words and behaviors that might lead to our being cast out of our kinship groups. While anxiety is an effective mechanism for suppressing aggression, it's also a maladaptive one. Its effects, in addition to the experience of this aversive emotion itself, are physically stressful, increasing that wear and tear on our bodies we call allostatic load. It's unsurprising, then, that anxiety disorders are often comorbid with physical illnesses, including gastrointestinal disease, cardiovascular illness, endocrine disorders, chronic pain, migraines, dementia, and Parkinson's disease. Clearly, finding more adaptive ways of processing angry, hostile emotion could well have a huge upside for any individual. In the following consultation session, Matt May, MD, and I consult with our colleague Agnes Kalwa, PhD, regarding an anxious patient she is treating. Matt and I first consulted with Agnes on stage at an international congress in Warsaw, Poland in August 2022. This session is a follow-up on that first consult.
All right, so I will tell something about the patient I will consult. This is the gentleman in his 40s. He actually just had 45th birthday. He celebrated in a not very big community. However, he's in psychotherapy for 3 years. And the reason he asked for psychotherapy, he was directed there by his leading psychiatrist who prescribed him drugs for his generalized anxiety disorder. The patient is worrying about many topics, mainly including his work, the thing he cannot manage, and the very significant symptom for him is feeling pain in his chest in the morning. The patient several years ago overtook the company that was led by his father. He's a manager, and he leads a big company. He's really very devoted to it, and he has completely different management style than his father. He's a friendly, nice person, while his father is more authoritarian figure. But the father is authority for the patient. He loves him very deeply. He's really connected to his parents. They live near his family, and they have everyday contact with each other. And the patient is married for a long time. They have a son with a disability that is serious enough for being worried about the son's future when they die. But mainly the patient focuses on his work and about his worries, about people he employs, about the future of the company. And now this is a very significant period for them because due to the war on the Ukraine and the COVID pandemic, the company is not working so well as it did before, and he sometimes even considers to sell the company, and he's really worried about the possible debts he can be in, because there's great financial investment in all, and he's really worried about the future of his family now, his wife and son. His father is a dominant man who still he's not working in the company, but he's still the very important figure there. And the patient really admires his father. However, he starts feeling angry in presence of his father. That is very difficult for him.
Well, thank you, Agnes, for giving us this wonderful summary of the work you're doing with this patient. I noticed as I was listening to you, I was liking this patient, and I was liking you. And I was liking the connection that the two of you have made with each other. So a starting point for me would be to express admiration for you and your work with this fellow. And I remember some of these details from our consultation time together, the three of us in Warsaw back in August. I don't think I have other questions for you about the material, but I'd like to check in with Matt and
thank
see
you,
if he
Daniel.
has
Thank you,
questions or
Agnes.
comments.
That was
so
a
far.
wonderful summary, and I'm feeling grateful to you and to your patient for being willing to step forward and talk about this problem in a way that could help a lot of people understand it better. In team therapy, we sometimes talk about how the cause of anxiety is excessive niceness. And I remember when you presented in Warsaw, the word nice showed up several times, and it showed up again as you're describing him today. And nice folks tend to sweep their feelings under the rug and not even be aware sometimes of conflicts and feelings of anger that they might be having. And you said he has a lot of trouble recognizing that anger. And then there's another rule that all feelings get expressed. And so if he's hiding that anger, it'll come out in other ways, like physical symptoms. You said he sometimes has this chest pain and worries and fears that he's going to have a heart attack or a stroke. Mm-hmm. Those are all classic signs of a hidden emotion. And to describe the hidden emotion model just briefly, the idea is that there's something the patient is experiencing in the form of a physical symptom or anxiety, that is a substitute for another concern that they've hidden from themselves, another problem that's in their life. And it's not a complicated thing. It's usually a very simple problem in their life, like they're angry with someone, like maybe he's angry with his dad for not wanting to sell the company, or he's angry with his wife for not being more understanding. But instead of talking about that feeling and expressing it, he focuses his mind on maybe I'll have a heart attack or something like that. And so it's a nice way of expressing anger that doesn't, cause any conflict or bring up any problems with other people. But he's taking on the kind of suffering onto himself. And then becoming aware of that and seeing that he has certain interpersonal rules, like I should not talk about my feelings with other people, and seeing if you can look at those rules and see what's awesome about him. Notice what we admire about these rules, and what's healthy about these rules as an initial step to identify, is he a candidate for the cure we have to offer? Or is he wanting to maintain his niceness and his anxiety out of respect for other people and caring for his relationships, and valuing peace and harmony in his relationships? And so oftentimes it's really the key to the work is in recognizing this resistance to change and noticing it with the patient, and getting into kind of a paradoxical role. Why would he want to change anything here when he's kind of the elevator, bringing other people up, putting himself last? It's a very moral way to live his life. And so, but we do have a cure, and it would be to find other ways to express those feelings, and to practice with self-disclosure, and notice that good things happen, like you feel closer to him when he expresses those feelings. And that's likely to be true for everyone in his life, that if he expresses his feelings in a respectful way, then he won't have to feel the anxiety anymore. He'll have a healthy way to talk about his feelings. And I'll shut up now because I've said too much.
I'd like to say that I'm really close to Matt's opinion, and that the patient already has chosen that he wouldn't like to maintain his niceness. But on the other hand, he's afraid of it, because the great value for him is to being useful for other people. And in his cost analysis, his doubts about expressing pride for himself is the fear of not being a narcissistic person, because anybody likes narcissistic people, and he would be rejected. And although in a rational way, when we have discussed it, we were even laughing about that I really would like to meet his narcissistic self. That could be such a nice conversation that I couldn't wait. But in an hidden emotional way, somehow he's getting stuck to this. And it doesn't help him to move forward. I think it's very difficult for him to imagine how to change his behavior to not be so nice. He's changing his behavior a little bit because he's starting to give some more tasks to his staff. And he has a friend collaborating with him, and he really can see her development as a person, her growth, because she was courageous enough to stop being too nice and to be more specific, more demanding for the others. and he really has this model. But I think the great problem is that he's an owner of the company, that he runs after his father, and he's stuck in a ambivalence, how to be a nice son, loving son, not rejected by the family, which is very important, and how to express himself. I think it's a huge topic, and over 3 years we did a lot of work on his insight. We did some systemic work as well to show him the connections, the burden that he's bearing because of being overtaking the company from his father. We were discussing some family connections and rules that were in this family over many years, and they have influence on him right now. However, sometimes I have impression on the patient that it makes me a little irritated, that he forgets this all, and he turns back to concentrate on the level that he was when he was admitted to therapy. I'm afraid so much, I'm worrying about my company. I know that he's making progresses, but this is something very strong in him that doesn't allow to develop. And the expression of fear of having heart attack or a stroke is also very important in this therapeutic relation, because 3 years ago, over 3 years ago, I left the patient for about 3 weeks because I myself had a sudden stroke, and he was aware of that. He was waiting for a continuation of the therapy, and he wasn't sure if I'm going back or not. And sometimes when we touch the topic of our relation, he expresses his fear of being left alone.
Thank you, Agnes. That was fantastic. You mentioned that you sometimes get a little bit irritated with him, and I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I'm wondering if you've been able to talk with him about those feelings. I'm also noticing a lot of complexity in this individual, that there may be multiple different sources of anxiety for him, one of which is the hidden emotion, the niceness, the sweeping feelings under the rug. There's also this fear that he'll be perceived in a negative light and rejected and left alone. For example, if he's proud of himself, that people will judge him and think he's narcissistic. And then he's got concerns of a financial variety around his company. And he's also facing a big decision about whether to sell the company or not. And people frequently have anxiety when they're considering two possible futures, like they have to worry about both. So there's a lot, I think, that we could offer this patient, and you're wanting to know how to move forward with him. And I wonder if we could narrow the scope a little bit just by pretending that you had a magic wand and asking you, what would you like to walk away with from this conversation today with Daniel and myself?
Well, I would like to ask for some ideas how to use the hidden emotion model knowledge to maybe make some interventions with this patient, and he's very interested in that. He's aware of that we're going to discuss the hidden emotion model, and he's asking what is what was the consultation, and he's very interested in that.
So thank you, Agnes and Matt. Agnes, you're saying that you'd like our help with perhaps two things. Next steps in moving forward, addressing the hidden emotion that is likely creating some of the anxiety the patient is feeling. And then also ideas of addressing this conflict the patient's feeling internally related to his management style as distinct from his father's management style, and also conflicts between the patient and some of the senior managers who are saying that he's not doing what he should be doing. So my thinking, Matt, would certainly align with yours, that some agenda setting with this patient would be a starting point. And we could dangle a carrot and say to the patient, we would see a possibility of him walking away from a lot of the anxiety that he's experiencing, waking up in the morning and being able to breathe freely and to look forward to his day and think of all of the wonderful things that he could do to help himself and help others in his professional life. And then also maybe articulate what we would see as the price he would pay to get the carrot, that he would need to start acknowledging to himself and to other people what he was really feeling in the course of relating to him. And that we could imagine that there'd be some excellent reasons to turn down this offer and to stay the course. And I think you articulated some of that earlier, Matt, that he's expressing some admirable core values related to harmony, attending to others, putting others first, and so forth. So this particular treatment that we would be offering may not, at the end of the day, be the treatment that he would want. But that if it were, we would feel very confident that we could offer him an approach that would have a very high probability of both reducing his anxiety and increasing his feelings of connection and solidarity with other people in his family and his company and so forth. So we'd want to make sure, in your words, Matt, that we had a candidate for the work that we could do. And Agnes, you mentioned you had done a cost-benefit analysis with this patient. Another team method that I would sometimes reach for here would be a decision-making form, where option A would be to stay the course and to be that nice guy and not to notice if he's feeling angry at a colleague or with his father or something, and pay the price that he's paying to get those benefits of that particular relational style. And then option B would be something in the direction of just developing the skills and expressing who he is emotionally in his relationships. And then he could articulate the up and the downside of both choices, get his total points, and that might shed a great deal of light on the matter for us. There would be some next steps we could then take to work from the decision-making form. I was also aware that Matt had highlighted your telling us that you were feeling some irritation with the patient. And I noticed that too. And if I start feeling negative emotion working with a very nice patient, I feel some reluctance to say to that very nice patient, you know, Agnes, I'm noticed I'm feeling a bit irritated with you right now. And I wanted to tell you that so that my behavior didn't tell you that. Those would be the only two choices that we would have. We can use words to express our emotions, or our bodies will express those emotions. And because I like you and respect you and want to cultivate the bond we have with each other, I'm expressing that emotion to you verbally. And I wonder, Agnes, what that's feeling like for you. So that might be the kind of thing that I would look to do with a patient like this. And all of what I said would pertain. I'm taking care of myself, the patient, and our relationship by doing that. I'm also modeling something, because the patient may not have ever seen an appropriate expression of negative emotion. And so being asked to do that, they might draw a blank. But if we can show them what that would look like and process a bit what happens when we're doing that, interestingly, I believe that every time I have done that with a patient, said, I noticed I'm feeling irritated, or I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling disappointed, I'm feeling hurt, the patient has responded very positively to me and said something like, Daniel, thank you for telling me that. This is great. And they don't even realize yet what's going on. They just go, oh, this is a relief. This other human being's being real with me. One patient told me, I think you're the first person in 60 years who has said to me, that patient, I was feeling bored with that patient. And part of me thought, oh my God, can't say that. I shouldn't be feeling that. That was the first part. And then I certainly can't say it. I have to look interested or something. And then I went, no, I don't think so. I like this person. I respect this person. If I'm feeling something like boredom, it's pretty important information for both of us. And so I just shared it with her in the direction that I've described. And she responded extremely positively to it. And that has happened pretty much every time I've done that. And then we could process with the patient downstream, okay, what happened there? And how does that bear on the patient's belief system, the patient's thoughts about their own negative emotion, and so forth? So those would be a couple of thoughts that would come to mind for me. And I wonder, Matt, if you
I
have
love
others
everything
that
you're
would
saying there,
address
Daniel.
Agnes' question of how to move
I had a couple of
forward
other
with a patient who has
ideas or
demonstrated
thoughts
to
to
us
go
that they
along
are
with
a
what you're
candidate
saying.
to address their anxiety
Oftentimes
by
when people are
walking
struggling
away
with
from
social
the
anxiety,
hidden emotion that they've
and I think
created.
my guess is that your patient has some of this as well. They have some self-defeating beliefs that their worth as a person hinges upon the approval of others. That if someone is disagreeing with them, that means that it's their fault or that they're not worthwhile. And so they don't have self-esteem that's independent of their other people's opinion of them. And oftentimes developing that self-esteem as an initial step can be quite useful. Sometimes it's necessary. And yet that's another point where you probably have to do a cost-benefit analysis, because one of his values is to be humble, not narcissistic, right? And so he's wanting to take other people's opinions very seriously, and not just proclaim himself unilaterally worthwhile. So he probably has some resistance just to liking himself, flaws and all. But that would be an important step in terms of building self-esteem. And then the future steps, when you realize there's a hidden emotion, the first task is to figure out, well, what is the hidden emotion? And that's usually guesswork. We don't know for sure. We just make guesses, like, is it possible you're angry with your dad? Or is it possible you're angry with your coworker who was kind of hogging the floor the other day? And then if you do become aware of it, then you identify, well, what could I do instead? What would be the healthier way to express that emotion? So he might need, and we have a whole battery of social exposure exercises, like smile and say hello. Just walking in public, smiling and say hello can be hard for shy people. Or using self-disclosure, talking about how we feel. And you can build up to things like rejection collection and shame attacking. and like he might need to go around bragging about how proud he is of some accomplishment in order to attack that shame, and then ask people what they think of him. Do they think he's a big narcissist? And he wants the real truth to get at those negative thoughts. So we'd have all these methods, but what Daniel is saying is so important, like the decision-making form. When you show him these methods, he's not going to want to do them. And we need to understand why, and to write down all the advantages of the status quo. It just feels safer. Like when he avoids interrupting that coworker that he's secretly feeling irritated with, he gets instant relief. And that rewards the anxiety when you get that instant relief. That's negative reinforcement. You take away the anxiety if you walk away from the conflict. And we'd be asking him, why would you change that? Why not just keep that easier approach in life? But if he can convince you and himself, no, I'm willing to pay this price and do all these methods and confront my anxiety and take the reins in my life, then he would be an excellent candidate. And we could line up many different tools, one of which I would highlight as an initial tool to use if he can convince you he wants to do this, is called the feared fantasy technique, where you have him imagine all the things he would be afraid of people thinking about him if he were to act in this other way. If he did a 180 in his behavior and he talked about his feelings, he felt really proud and confident, interrupted people if they were talking above him or something like that. I'm speaking of which, I'm talking too much. Let me pause there for a minute and give Agnes an opportunity to ask any questions she might have.
Okay, thank you. I think there is a wide range of very fantastic ideas. I think I was trying to express my negative emotion. I remember one session when I told the patient that I'm really feeling sleepy when he's doing his narration about his anxiety, and I'm wondering why this is happening. And patient really did some summary of that, and he asked me, "Oh, you were saying about being bored with me," and I admitted that, and he was a little bit touched. However, he had difficulties to express it, and he went to his manner of racializing anything, analyzing, like, okay, I can understand that because I'm not expressing anything on my face. I'm really like making a circle, saying all the time, repeating about all these fears all the time, like the machine maybe. We had quite a interesting conversation, and I really told him that I'm so grateful to be more brave than his therapist to express that I was bored with him. But there's not very frequent when I'm feeling irritating with him during the sessions, and I think the self-esteem thing is something that patient underlines many times, that he really needs to elevate his self-esteem, and he doesn't know how. And sometimes when we have some benefits of the session in this direction, I'm asking him, how is his self-esteem right now? Is it a little better? And he admits that, okay, in this moment when he's thinking like that, this is great. I think I really like the idea of encouraging him to express emotions, to introduce some exercises that could make him express it more, but that would have to be maybe smiling and saying hello. This is something that he's doing in his life all the time. But maybe this a sort of shame attacking, and I think I could what could be very useful in working with this patient could be imaginary techniques, like pure fantasy about imagining what other people think about him. And I'm really interested in idea of decision-making form. I think this is something that has already started, because he's making a decision to not be such a nice guy because he's paying the price. But it's like if in Poland we say to be with your one leg in this decision and with the other leg in the other decision. So he's stuck. Sometimes he forgets about his decision of not being nice. I think he needs some more encouragement. And additionally, I have the idea that maybe the difficulties with expressing, I have difficulty with the therapeutic alliance. If we should talk about maybe his feelings towards me, I thought that maybe expressing his fear from the having heart attack or stroke, or not, or denying being irritated at me, maybe he's trying to protect me a little bit, like he protects other people in his life, like his friends from the company. He protects them from negative experiences, emotions. He's protecting his wife and many people around. However, no, this is not something we have discussed. It's just an idea that came to my mind, and I will think about how to develop it. And I think that the techniques that could make him express himself in an imaginary way and in real life could be really a good idea, because this is something we didn't use in the therapy.
Thank you, Agnes. I really appreciate what you just shared with us. I have a couple of ideas. One would be, we can invite the patient to first practice with us and then go in vivo expressing negative emotion to other people. So when we're out shopping or parking our car, doing all the things we do, most of us will feel some negative emotion. Someone says something, does something, and we'll feel hurt or annoyed or disappointed. And if we practiced first in the office, what can happen when someone cuts in line? How could we express in an appropriate way that we're feeling unhappy about what they've done? And this would be another way to really take the battle to the enemy, to look for those opportunities to express negative emotion publicly. You spoke to the therapeutic alliance and the huge opportunity that brings along with it to desensitize ourselves and patients to our fears and phobias. And one of the team methods that I have found very helpful there is the interpersonal downward arrow, where we would articulate the roles, the rules, and the feelings in a relationship. We can do this ourselves in consultation. What's our perception of our roles, the patient's roles, our feelings when we're in those roles, and then the interpersonal beliefs or rules that are placing us in those roles. We can also invite a patient to use this method, either in their relationship with us or in their relationship with people generally. There's usually a lot of overlap between what's happening in the therapeutic alliance and what's happening in a marriage or happening in a professional setting or so forth. So that can provide some very actionable material in a very high-speed way. We can get right to the heart of the matter, which, as I would see it, would be those interpersonal beliefs or rules. In his case, maybe I must not be angry, or I must not have conflicts, or that kind of thing. The other thought that came to mind for me related to his relapsing. He'll progress and then he starts again talking about having a heart attack or something like that. And that could lend itself to an analysis in terms of the interpersonal downward arrow. I would wonder if one of the beliefs he has is I must not get better because I'll lose Agnes. And if I'm demonstrating to her and to myself, I can go out into the world and live my life. I won't be able to have this wonderful interaction in a regular basis with a very warm and understanding human being. So that would be a guess about what might be going into his going back to the old ways. I think sometimes when we're seeing children regress and they start talking baby talk again, when they have a younger sibling who seems to be getting a lot of attention, we might be seeing something like that. I don't want to lose something, so I'll go back to an earlier way of being to reestablish a meaningful connection with my parent or something like that. I wonder, Matt, if you have other thoughts, questions for Agnes in the direction of the hidden emotion and steps that she and this patient could take going forward.
Sadly, I'm getting close to the end of my available time. I have a number of other thoughts. I'm not sure if it's directly related to the hidden emotion. Maybe I'll just flag them for a possible future conversation. One is that when people have a fear of being alone, oftentimes doing some form of pleasure prediction, where they deliberately spend time alone, making their best effort to find joy and happiness in that time being alone. And that can help people overcome that fear. And then I had another question about many people who have this negative thought, I'll have a stroke or I'll have a heart attack, are prone to having panic attacks. And we could talk about why that is, but often the experimental technique can rapidly resolve panic attacks, where you try to get your anxiety as high as possible and then see if you can have a heart attack. Do jumping jacks or something like that. See if you can have a stroke. And when you realize, oh no, it's just a panic attack, it's not a heart attack, and you're no longer afraid of having panic attacks, that you can get a lot of relief from that. But I don't know if he has panic attacks or not, but those thoughts are common panic attack thoughts. It could just all be hidden emotion stuff as well. But I'm really delighted, Agnes, to reconnect with you and to talk about this case one more time. Hope to get an update and hear how some of this goes. And if there's an opportunity for round 3, sign me up. I'd be delighted to work with you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks to both of you. Wonderful to reconnect. And thanks again, Agnes, and to your patient for helping us teach others a bit about approaches to our relationship to our feelings.
I think both me and the patient again got a huge present from you. Thank you for such a great gift. It's
My
not
pleasure.
Christmas yet. However, I feel as if it was Christmas in some way.
Christmas in October. Why not have it come early?
I know.
Thank you for watching our consultation. I hope you enjoyed it and perhaps learned something about the relationship between repression and anxiety. If you'd like to access such case consultation yourself, you can do so through my weekly interactive webinar program, All Things CBT. Find more information at www.allthingscbt.com. If you are a level 3, 4, or 5 team CBT therapist, you're welcome to join Matt and my weekly online consultation group offered through the Feeling Good Institutes. Contact me directly for details. Finally, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel and receiving notice when I and my colleagues post new content.